You would have to be just about living under a rock to not know about the drought situation in the West this year.
Moment of reckoning in the drought-stricken West. The
And if you've been following along, you probably know that the Colorado River is in trouble.
nation's largest two reservoirs, Lake Mead near Las Vegas and Lake Powell in southern Utah, have fallen to their lowest levels on record.
The river is bankrupt. We simply do not have enough water to meet demands. And unless the entire region takes decisive action to save water, one more dry year could lead to system collapse on the river. This means the West will have drained the reasonably accessible water savings in the river's two major reservoirs. The only water left would be what's actually flowing through the river, and that's nowhere near enough. Farmers, ranchers, businesses, and communities, they all would not be able to count on the river's reservoirs. We're about to overdraw our account, and the consequences of that would be devastating. The guidelines that manage the river expire in just a few months, yet the 7 states that all share the river have failed to come to any meaningful agreement about how to manage the water past this deadline, leaving the decision up to the federal government. The Bureau of Reclamation has already published their final environmental impact statement, which outlines various plans for how the river could be managed. Today on this WRA bonus episode, what's the plan for the Colorado River?
All right, listen up. I've been thinking, and I believe I figured something out. You folks have a water problem.
John Berggren is probably a name that you recognize from the podcast in the past.
John Berggren, Regional Policy Manager with Western Resource Advocates.
John has been intimately involved with WRA's work to protect the Colorado River over the last few years. So how are things in the Colorado River Basin right now? John gave me a very technical answer.
This year is very, very bad.
He says the crisis is here.
We've been hearing about this potential Colorado River crisis for years, if not decades. We've known about climate change and drought and overuse and everything. And this year it's all coming to a head. We just had one of the warmest winters on record. We just had one of the worst snowpacks on record. We're having one of the worst runoffs on record. And what we're seeing is that is translating to the two big reservoirs, Lake Powell and Lake Mead, are going down, and they're steadily going down, and they're going to continue to go down and potentially get really close, if not cross critical thresholds in their elevation. So things are bad. We're in the crisis, and we're going to be in it for a bit here.
And just what are those critical thresholds?
The thresholds that that Reclamation wants to protect at Lake Powell and Lake Mead are basically the hydropower intakes. That's 3490, elevation 3490 at Lake Powell, but they want to have some buffers, so they want to protect 3500. If you go below that level, there's limited ways to release water out of Main Canyon Dam, and there's questions about the long-term use of those limited ways. In Lake Mead, they try and protect elevation 1000, because below that you're getting pretty close to dead pool, and you're already at 1000, losing a lot of your hydropower production. So it's basically things are getting so low that those dams and reservoirs are no longer functioning as intended.
The water level in the reservoirs is getting lower and lower.
As of the recording of this podcast, the federal government has stepped in with a plan.
Yeah, so the current guidelines have been in place since 2007, and they are going to be need to be replaced by the end of this September. So starting October 1st, we need a new set of guidelines for how the system is managed. And so what has been happening over the last couple of years is there's just the ongoing federal NEPA process, National Environmental Policy Act process, to develop those new sets of guidelines. And we've had the 7 basin states negotiating to try and come up with a framework that can be utilized for the new guidelines.
John says that over the history of the river, generally these plans have been negotiated by all of the states together, and the federal government has used that to come up with their final plan. This time, that's not the case.
When there needs to be a new agreement, the 7 states will negotiate. They'll come up with a 7-state agreement, and the federal government will often take that as the approach, or the set of guidelines, or the set of policies. What we've seen, though, is the basin states have been going at it for almost 3 years and are not close to a agreement. We were hoping long before this time that they would have some sort of consensus where we could all build upon and work with, and there'll be no risk of litigation, and we'd be able to see these new guidelines go into place that are much are very robust and actually fix a lot of the problems that we're seeing. But the states are just having the same arguments they've had for years. They're entrenched legal positions. They're arguing over who's going to use less water and by how much and when. They're arguing over the reservoirs and how water is released from the reservoirs. And so they're really kind of stuck in this long-term negotiation. And so that's why the feds have moved forward. They have this preferred alternative that will become the new guidelines starting October 1st.
To expedite these negotiations, we are prepared to make you a very generous offer.
And we are prepared to reject that offer.
Michael, you haven't even heard.
Never accept their first offer.
Advocates would have much rather the states had reached a long-term plan. This would significantly lower the likelihood of litigation and would have allowed room for creativity, finesse, and new solutions to save water and protect the river. Instead, since the states don't have a plan and the guidelines expire this September, the federal government has been forced to move the process along without the states. It's important to emphasize that solutions are still achievable, but it is much more difficult, and the likelihood of litigation between the states is much higher. Not having the states in agreement raises the risk of a costly lawsuit between the states. To make matters worse, it also puts the future of the river in the hands of the Supreme Court and takes it away from the states who actually depend on it. I asked if there could be an agreement to get to some solutions without all of the states agreeing.
Not from a legal standpoint, because one of the other states will sue if someone says they're not going to be involved. But setting that aside just for a second, from a political and a hydrological perspective, everyone's got to be a part of the solution. I mean, that's what we're dealing with in this era of climate change, and the impacts of warming temperatures are on the snowmelt driven system. Flows are down. Things are not looking good. The trend is not in the right direction, and in order to fix that, everyone's going to have to put some skin in the game. So we say that from a political perspective, everyone's got to contribute to the solution so that everyone else can go home and say, hey, yes, we're taking steep cuts. Yes, I know this is going to be hard for our water users, but I'll tell you what, every other state is doing their part. So politically, it's essential for every state to contribute to the solution. And then hydrologically, like I said, things are bad. The amount of water that we need to conserve just to keep the reservoirs from getting too low is it's on the millions of acre feet scale. We're no longer talking about a couple 100,000 acre feet of water. We're talking about 1, 2, 3 million acre feet of conservation and shortages, or what needed to actually bring the system back into balance. And if you're talking that scale of millions of acre feet, just looking at the numbers, every state's got to put in every single drop that they can. No state can kind of sit this one out and not be a part of the solution, because it's only when you add up every single state's individual efforts, individual acre feet here, 1,000 acre feet here, tens of thousand acre feet there, 100,000 acre feet there, that's when you can actually get to the scale needed to fundamentally fix the problem.
So that leaves another big question. Why are we so concerned about state litigation? What does that mean, and why is it so bad?
Since the states have not been able to reach an agreement over the last couple of years, what we've started to hear more recently is a lot of legal arguments, a lot of saber rattling, a lot of setting aside state budget dollars for litigation funds, and some states being quite vocal about their concerns about where things are going and their right to sue or their right to litigate based on where things are going. And it's incredibly concerning if there is a state lawsuit and this ends up in the Supreme Court. That will just completely shut down any creative thinking. It will shut down any negotiations. It will shut down the ability for more perspectives to be heard and values to be integrated. And it basically just ties everything up to where nothing gets done. And then it plays out over a decade at the Supreme Court. It costs hundreds of millions of dollars, and there's no certainty with the outcome. Both the upper and lower basin states think that they have the best legal position, and they have the best legal arguments. They both think they have the best attorneys, which is great. But you can't honestly say that I know what the Supreme Court's going to decide, or I know what my risk is at the Supreme Court, or I know how good it could be at the Supreme Court, I know how bad it could be at the Supreme Court. It is a huge risk, and I think that's one of the biggest concerns we have is the risk to water users, the risk to tribes, the risk to the considerations of the river itself. Those kind of go by the wayside when you're talking about trying to preserve every legal argument, and you can't compromise because you need to make sure your legal position is solid. And so it's a huge risk, huge uncertainty, and really I hope that it doesn't come to that.
This is madness.
This is politics.
The farmers, ranchers, communities, fish, and wildlife that all depend on the Colorado River don't have 10 years to hash this out in the Supreme Court. By far, the best plan is to solve these problems now with a long-term solution that saves water and considers the health of the river. WRA has been fighting to keep the river out of litigation, an advanced solution that would keep the river healthy for generations to come.
So we have been involved in the NEPA process since the beginning. We've submitted many comment letters along the way. We put together one of the alternatives that the Bureau of Reclamation included in its environmental impact statement process. We have worked closely with Reclamation to make sure that alternative exactly is what we want. We've worked with the states, with tribes, with lots of stakeholders trying to help influence this process. We're trying to get as many good ideas on the table and hopefully help make the politics such that those ideas are received. And so we're going to continue to be involved in that. We're going to continue to work with the Bureau of Reclamation on its new record of decision on the new guidelines going into effect. The new guidelines won't have everything we want, right? We know that. We know that that's going to come down the road, but the new guidelines will hopefully open the door, keep the door open for a lot of things we do want. And so we're going to work hard with the feds, with the states, with tribes, with many other stakeholders and water users to build out the programs that we do want, build upon the framework or the scaffolding that is in the preferred alternative, and actually, try and push both the states and the feds to get to a place where the guidelines are more effective. They are able to help prevent the reservoirs from getting so low, and they do incorporate other values than just water deliveries.
We often use financial terms to describe the situation on the Colorado River. Anyone who's ever taken a personal finance course knows that one of the most important rules is to spend less than you make. Right now on the Colorado River, we are overspending and we are headed towards bankruptcy.
Maybe I'll just say, you and I were chatting before you hit the record button about how bad things are, and you can see that on the ground. You go around the west right now and you look at some of the reservoirs and you see how scarily low they are. It's really concerning. And the fact that we're having this winter and the 7 states are still not in agreement and the feds are moving forward, but it's probably not going to be enough. I don't know how much more of a crisis we could be in. And I really hope that there's talk of a super El Nino being developed in the Pacific, and maybe that will save us and get us. And I really hope that we don't let that be our solution. If there's anything that this whole process has shown, this whole federal process of developing new guidelines, there's a lot of really good ideas on the table. There's a lot of cool, innovative thinking that is out there that isn't wishful thinking and isn't just completely unrealistic. There's a lot of realistic, implementable, good solutions on the table, and I just hope that we start actually picking those up and putting them into the policies and actually seeing them built out and become the new guidelines so that we can have a sustainable Colorado River, because right now it ain't working.
Of the recording of this video, the Bureau of Reclamation has released their FEIS, and John and WRA's experts are digging in to figure out exactly what these different proposed plans would mean for the Colorado River. We're looking to identify solutions that protect river health, protect tribal sovereignty, protect tribal water rights, and keep the river flowing for generations to come. Federal funding and a transparent decision-making process will be critical in implementing the plans outlined in the FEIS. What is clear is that our communities need on-the-ground solutions that address the problems on the river now, not expensive litigation that would tie up millions of taxpayer dollars and send the river to the Supreme Court. Litigation over the river would take years to solve, cost the taxpayers millions of dollars, and send the future of the river to the Supreme Court. A healthy Colorado River is the backbone of the West. As John said, the crisis is here. Now it's time for action. Lastly, we'd like to thank the sponsors who support our work. Our premier sponsor is Kind Design. Our signature sponsors are Sweep, Denver Water, Scarpa, Soul Up, and Torch Clean Energy. Our supporting sponsors are Group Fortune Engineering, Megafauna River Company, and BSW Wealth Partners.